I'm Senator Tina Smith from Minnesota, and I'm here with my good friend, Andrew Zimmern from Minnesota. Andrew, how are you today?
I'm great, Senator. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm here in Washington, and you're here in Minnesota. And we're all here together to talk about how important it is to think about mental health, especially this week and especially right now as we're urging Congress to support mental health. And Andrew, I know you've done so much on this issue. Tell me a little bit about why this is one of those heart issues for you.
Well, it's. I'll tell you what's going on now for me, and then I'll give you a little bit of background. What's going on now for me as a cultural anthropologist and someone who's done a lot of reporting in my new MSNBC series on addiction and mental health, and I've lived in that space my whole life. Is we are undergoing the greatest transformative event of our lifetimes. And in this giant global pandemic, which is reflective of an incredible ambiguity and uncertainty, we are starting to see the ravages that this is taking not only on those who deal with mental health issues on a regular basis, but the traumatic effects of this pandemic are now being felt on people who had never experienced things like that before. I got sober 28 years ago and went to Hazelden, what is now called Hazelden Betty Ford in Minnesota. I've stayed sober ever since. And lots of mental health issues in my family on either end of it and all around me. And so I've been working, head button overcoat on this issue since the late Senator Paul Wellstone and Congressman Jim Ramstad sort of grabbed me by the elbow when I had just been living here. This is 25 years ago, and said,
right,
come on, we're going to knock doors and talk to people about an issue that has so much stigma attached to it, so many other hurdles to get in front of. Most people would rather ignore this problem. But the fact of the matter is that all of these, this whole family of isms, as I like to call them, have been ignored, underfunded. We try to look the other way. We don't want to acknowledge these things in our lives. It's uncomfortable. We don't know how to deal with it. Yet the very simple fact is that it's all around us. It affects every single family in America, every single family in the world. And if we don't address it now, if not now, when? And if not us, who? So I'm so proud of the work that you guys have all done on the Hill with this. It's just absolutely amazing.
Well, I think that you both of us share this connection to Paul Wellstone's work. I sit in the seat that Paul once held, and I take the legacy of lifting up the importance of addressing mental health issues really seriously. And Paul's infectious, we're going to all get together and solve this problem. We can do this. He's an organizer at heart, just like I would say you and I are organizers at heart. And so I think you bring that same sort of infectious, we can figure this out, and it's okay to talk about this. In fact, we need to talk about this.
We have to. And, Paul would take this time to say, right, we all win when we all win. The strain and drain on our children, our family system, our schools, the workplaces, the cost of healthcare in America, the cost in lost productivity to everything from emotional and physical abuse, alcoholism, drug addiction, a whole range of other isms is absolutely astronomical. And at a time now where we're spending, just from an economic standpoint, we're spending so much money, and rightfully so, on other things. We're spending trillions of dollars to make sure that America gets through to the other side of this pandemic on its 2 feet. by addressing these issues and investing in help for anyone who needs it, and by bolstering those communities, we're actually saving money. We're going to be saving
Right,
money on
right.
healthcare and our prison system, and emergency room visits where people tend to take folks who they don't know what's wrong with them and just sort of leave them there. It's an absolutely
Right.
staggering toll. We know that
Well, and
suicide.
we know that emergency rooms are actually the place where people are most likely to get treated for a mental health crisis, which is, of course, one of the worst places. I mean, of course, you go there because you need to be safe, and that's really important. But I think you raised such a good point, and this is especially an issue right now where mental health can't be seen as something that is just nice to do a little bit of on top of everything else we're doing. It is really central to what we're doing, which is part of the reason that I try to always talk about whole health. It's brain health, it's body health. And as we are addressing the impacts of this pandemic, I see every day the impacts of people's mental health worries, whether I'm talking to, a pork producer in southern Minnesota that is dealing with the loss of his entire herd, or a dad who's home with a toddler with special needs, and he doesn't have the help that he needs, and he is literally at the end of his rope trying to figure out how to take care of himself and take care of his son. Or the people that I've spoken to who have really been relying on that mental health safety net as they deal with substance use disorders, and that safety net isn't there anymore because they can't access that care in the same way. These are all the problems that we need to solve right now in Congress, which is why it's so important for you to be using your voice in this way, Andrew.
Well, I love hearing you saying all that, Senator. Anxiety, depression, stress, trauma. There are many folks here in America who deal with that on a very, very even level. It doesn't redline for them. They may not even know that they have stress, anxiety, depression, or trauma issues in their life. They manage it very well. I mean, because those things are present for all of us in our lives, right? If people I know who I call normies in my life tell me, oh, I had a stressful day, or I had a lot of anxiety today because we didn't know if, our kid would get into college, or, Becky would pass her fifth grade, final exams, or if there would be milk in the enough milk for cereal this morning, right? But when we're going through
Right.
a global pandemic like this, when we have, rampant unemployment, when the facts on the ground, culturally in our country, sociologically in our country, are what they are, people who have been managing all of a sudden see spikes in that, and they don't know how to handle it. I feel very blessed as someone who's been sober 28 years to actually have a program of action that I can take part in when I start to feel these things bubble up. I have resources. For so many, they don't have resources. And the other thing that I would mention is that I've learned along the way, as I've dealt with emotional sobriety, that trauma that's not transformed is transmitted. In other words, we can
Yes,
take
that's
that
so
out
true.
to our families around us, to people in the workplace, to anyone that we interact with. I mean, even things, and I'm not trying to be cute here, like road rage is a trauma transmission event, right? You actually can
Yes.
suck somebody else into it. And my fear, and I've talked to a lot of professionals about this over the last couple of months, is that it's so hard for people to stay grateful and lean into, at this time in their lives, and lean into what's making them happy. Instead, what we're doing is we're falling prey to the voices in our head that don't tell us the truth and are leaning into anxiety, depression, stress, and trauma. That is only going to escalate the need. I worry most about our children. So yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
that psychiatric boarding that you were talking about, the act of using the emergency room, is certainly something anyone should do that right away if there's a
Absolutely.
crisis problem. But it's indicative of the lack of resources that we actually have.
Right. And that is a problem that we need to, as you say, lean into right now, particularly right now. It is just so important. So, today we are asking everybody to lift up their voices and call on Congress to take action and to address this challenge. It is more important now than ever before. And so as we stand on the shoulders of leaders like Pete Domenici and Paul Wellstone and Jim Ramstad to make sure that mental health care is treated as health care, and that people have the care that they need, I'm really grateful. And I want everyone to remember, you should lift up your voices too. And the hashtag that we are encouraging folks to use today is #FundMentalHealth. And that will help all of the decision makers in Washington and around the country appreciate the power of the voices that that people have. And Andrew, I always say, especially if I'm talking to veterans audiences or farmers, I always say that asking for help when you need it is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. And so people should
1000%.
use their strength to ask for help, and that they need to know that that help is going to be there.
You are so correct, and it's interesting. You brought up a fascinating topic in your call to action. If somebody has a broken arm, they immediately know it needs to be fixed. Something hurts. They go to the hospital right away. It gets set in a cast. They are told to take some Advil and they go home. And 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, they're cut out of that cast and all is well. All of the issues we're talking about today, and I love talking about this as whole health. It's so important. I'm going to steal that one. I love that's my new permanent call sign for this whole health.
That's yours.
But I'm so concerned.
It's like
for somebody.
Whole Foods, Andrew.
Yeah, no,
right?
absolutely,
It's just like Whole Foods.
Absolutely. Recognizing that there is a problem is a big problem when it comes to whole health and the whole subset of mental health issues, because so many of them, anxiety, stress, depression, trauma, alcoholism, other addictions, all come with a strange mental blank spot and an inner voice that tells you that you don't have a problem. And then you add on that the shame and stigma of not asking for help. That's why it's so important to tell everyone what, I want to jump up and down and hug you from 2,000 miles away. Asking for help is what it's all about. Everybody says to me, name one thing that I can do today for my own wellness. And I always say, tell one other human being what's really going on with you. That's the first step in an incredible journey of healing and compassion and bringing people into your life. So just absolutely love that.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for everything that you do. Because of the power of your voice and the reach of your voice, you help to communicate to people that it is that we need to get rid of the discrimination around mental health. We need to lift it up as something that we can address, we can deal with if we deal with it together. And everybody who's listening to this, the next time you ask somebody, how are they doing, like pause and really give them an opportunity to tell you truly how they are. And that's great. That's great. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much for helping today with this.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate all you do.